Welcome to Haxby Shed. Now if you follow my channel, you'll know that a few days ago I got this Harrison mill. There's not very much wear on it, but it suffers from the typical problem that people put grease where they should only put oil. But it's not too bad. It's not like my lathe. My lathe was just absolutely caked in grease everywhere, and the only option was to strip it all down. This isn't too bad. I've made a start and I've dismantled part of the jacking screw that lifts the knee, and the next thing I'm going to do is take this part off here, take this cartridge out and see how much grease we find in there. That'll give me an idea of what I'm likely to have to do. I'd like to say thanks to Carl Wilson, who's made an excellent series of videos on stripping down his Harrison mill, and he goes into precise detail about, where all the screws are, what all the threads are, and so on. He's not finished his series yet, but I've watched this part that's relevant to what I'm doing, and it's been absolutely invaluable. I'll put a link into his channel. I've also watched Ralphie Customs, where he got his new Harrison mill, and that's been interesting to hear the sound of the mill, because I think this mill does sound a bit rough. I'll say rough. I think it's the motor bearings. Not sure, not heard one running before. And it's difficult on audio, on YouTube, but that's what I think. Anyway, let's take a look. I've put the microphone down there and hopefully you can hear. I mean, it's not too bad, but I do think it should be smoother than that. All of this came apart easily. The thread in here is in very good condition. This is caked in grease. We'll take this cartridge out and we'll just see what's in there. I've locked the handle on. Hopefully I can just hit it. Well, it does come out like that. Do you know, it's not too bad, that, actually. Actually, this gear is almost a bit dry. There's a thrust bearing there, there's another one in there. Get this nut off, pull the gear off, this shaft comes out, and then we can get the grease out from the inside there. That's where the grease goes in that hole. Interestingly, all the grease was the same colour, so it kind of suggests, the culprit might have been acting on just one occasion, who knows. The nut on the end here is either 3/4 or 19mm, depending on where you went to school. Try not to lose everything off at once. It's easier, safer that way, isn't it? Can you see? There we are. Probably a washer, yes, a washer. And the gear. And the cup for the thrust bearing. I'll put it that way up. Don't lose any ball bearings, please. Right, and then probably I can get this out. Yes, there we go. Try not to lose everything. Oh, it's not too bad. Right, I'll clean that out next. Got a lovely brass collar on there. Bush, bronze, whatever it is anyway. Good. That's the irony. Despite all this grease, this bearing is actually a little bit on the dry side, I would say. It's not too bad in here either, actually. It's only grease at this end. It's just like it's been greased once. Somebody's had a mad minute and didn't get the brief. I washed that out with a bit of brake cleaner and it's nearly ready to go back together. Just look how dry that bearing is. I mean, it's not super dry, but it's not that well lubricated for all that grease in there. There's no identifying marks on that gear, so I'll just have to remember which way around it was. It's still the same now. I haven't messed it up yet. Well, that's clean enough. I've oiled this. Maybe a squirt up here as well. That can go on there. That's that. try and get this on without dropping it. Nut on the end. I can finish cleaning this gear afterwards. It's pretty good though. I'll give everything a liberal coating of oil. I just want to get the preload right on these thrust bearings here. It's a nylock nut at the end there. That's a bit off yet. Something like that. Just a bit of phone video. I stripped this down again. I thought about this bush and it didn't seem right. You can see that drill there just holding it in place. Now that bush was free and loose, but I think it should have been a press. So I've cleaned it up, put some Loctite on it, and the drill in there is just to hold it in position while the Loctite goes off. Just looking at the gear on the top of the jacking screw, there's a bit of grease on it, but it's not too bad. Anyway, I'm not taking it out, so I'll squirt some brake cleaner in there and we'll do our best. This is the lubrication point for the bearing at the top of this screw. Now it's quite a vulnerable bearing because you get a lot of fluid down from the table, and I can see the bearing is a bit rusty inside. This is just a collar. Now screwed in here is this fitting, and it's shielded by this, so you can't get anything on to pressure feed in the oil in this case. Now I use a grease gun full of oil, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an extended fitting which is on a stub, and it will bring it out to about here, and then I can get the gun onto it. We're ready for this to go back on now. Give it a bit of oil to start it off. Make sure I've got the oil hole at the top. Engage the dowels. Slightly fiddly, but it's fine. Put my screws in. Just look at this. I'm going to zoom in to this. You can see clearly the hole below isn't lined up properly. It's probably good enough. I'll be forcing the oil under pressure anyway. Just a bit annoying. So next, let's try and clean the jack screw the lazy way. Okay, so if I run that and put a rag on the screw, I can clean the grease off quite easily, I think. I've put the nut on, and this is jamming in one or two places. I'm being a little bit careful here. Well, if all goes to plan now, if I release this jack, this will drop, this will sit on its seat, and I'll tighten the screws up. Assuming I can get this to lower. There it goes, woohoo! That's all right then. And it just needs nipping up. And then that's finished cleaning. Well, that's running very freely. So the next job will be cleaning up all this area and getting the grease out of the ways in this, but without taking the whole thing to pieces. I've got a plan.